Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something pretty wild. We're uncovering a forensic note-taking secret that elite, top-performing students use to practically predict the future. Think back to your last major lecture. You know the feeling, right? The hand cramps, the absolute panic of realizing you just missed a crucial sentence because you were frantically trying to scribble down the previous one. Well, we're talking about a total transformation of how you capture information today. We're completely ditching those exhausting, traditional methods you were probably taught in school. And instead, we're stepping into a highly strategic, incredibly efficient system called predictive annotation.
Picture this. You walk into your next exam, you confidently flip the page, and boom, you realize you've already seen every single question. It sounds like magic, doesn't it? Or maybe even a little like cheating. But it isn't. Top students aren't necessarily born with photographic memories, and they don't inherently have higher IQs. Instead, they operate on a fundamentally different system of intentionality. They know exactly what their teacher is going to ask way before the test is even printed. This is a highly intentional system that literally turns your everyday notebook into a predictive forensic tool, entirely removing the guesswork from your study sessions.
So there's actually a massive divide in the academic world when it comes to capturing information. On one side, you have the passive recorder. This is the student acting like a frantic human typewriter, just desperately scribbling down every single word the professor says. They're simply recording the past, and honestly, the inevitable result is total burnout. But on the other side, we have the elite detective. This is the student who transforms their notes into an active forensic tool. They aren't just transcribing, they're filtering, they're analyzing, and they're predicting the future. And that makes them completely unstoppable when exam day finally rolls around. Now, if you're out there just highlighting everything in your textbook, you are falling into a massive trap known as the illusion of competence. I mean, it feels incredibly productive, right? Your textbook is glowing in bright neon yellow, pink, and green. You feel like you're totally mastering the material. But cognitive science and the actual habits of top students tells us a very different story. Highlighting requires almost zero cognitive effort, which results in a shocking retention rate of just 10%. Yeah, 10%. That means 90% of what you highlight simply vanishes from your working memory almost immediately.
See, your brain actually treats passive notes exactly like junk mail. Because there's no active problem solving or critical thinking happening while you're highlighting or transcribing, your brain just filters out all that information as unimportant background noise. So acting like that human typewriter means 80% of your study effort goes straight into the trash. Only a tiny fraction, about 20%, translates into productive, usable learning. To fix this catastrophic waste of time, you have to fundamentally change your input method so your brain actually recognizes the information as highly valuable survival data.
Okay, so here's our detective's blueprint for today. We're going to cover number 1, the human typewriter trap. 2, the empty cup mindset. 3, catching the red threads. 4, anchors and the 5-by rule. And finally, number 5, the sensei ritual.
Let's jump straight into Section 1, the human typewriter trap, recording the past versus predicting the future.
The ultimate antidote to this typewriter trap is predictive annotation. This shifts your entire focus away from passive transcription and moves it directly toward active exam mapping. Instead of capturing what's already been said just to have a record of it, you're actively listening for specific verbal cues. And what does a verbal cue sound like? Well, it's when a professor suddenly slows down their speech, or maybe they dramatically change their tone, repeat a phrase twice, or simply just come out and say, hey, this is a core concept. You are categorizing this information on the fly, based purely on its likelihood of showing up on your exam.
Moving right along to Section 2, the empty cup mindset, redefining the classroom.
To make this work, you have to enter the room specifically to discover what you don't know yet. This concept actually stems from a famous Zen philosophy about emptying your cup, which was famously echoed by the legendary martial artist Bruce Lee. Think about it. If you walk into class constantly worried about failing, or on the flip side, driven by an ego that just wants to prove you're already smart, your mental cup is entirely full. There's literally no room for new, critical evidence to enter your mind. You have to empty that cup, drop the ego completely, and approach the material with genuine, unclouded curiosity.
It's time to transform your boring lecture hall into an active, high-stakes crime scene. You aren't just a passive audience member anymore, sitting in the back row mindlessly checking your phone. No, you're a detective actively hunting for evidence. This means deliberately filtering out the noise. Like totally ignoring the 10-minute tangent about the professor's weekend trip and instead honing in exclusively on the core principles. You are focusing strictly on the hard clues that point directly to what will actually be printed on that final test paper. You've got to treat every single sentence as potential evidence.
All right, let's look at Section 3, Catching the Red Threads. Identifying the clues.
Here's the secret. Your teacher is constantly dropping clues, and your only job is to isolate and record those high-probability targets. See, your teacher's role isn't just to stand there and talk for an hour. They naturally drop continuous themes and repeat specific structural concepts throughout the lesson. Imagine a theme that brilliantly connects a Week 1 introductory lecture directly to a really complex Week 3 lab experiment. Those foundational connections? Those are the red threads. You aren't wasting time writing down the filler, you are catching the vital structural threads that the entirety of your final exam will be woven from.
Now, for Section 4, Anchors, and the 5X rule, processing the evidence.
This is where it gets fun, because using grid recall burns actual stories into your visual memory. If you just write down the word mitochondria, your brain is like, whatever, and files it as easily forgettable abstract text. But what if you draw a tiny factory with aggressive sparks just flying out of the engines? Bam, you've just created a powerful visual anchor. Our brains actually have an evolutionary preference for dynamic, moving, and potentially dangerous things, like fire and sparks. By attaching abstract scientific concepts to vivid, dynamic imagery, you aren't just memorizing words anymore. You are locking in unforgettable, survival-level stories.
Look, passively rewriting textbook chapters is almost completely useless for your long-term retention. Instead, you're going to use the 5-by-writing rule, straight from Japanese top-tier schools, to build a deep neural network around a topic. Tonight, take just one of your red threads and process it 5 distinct ways. First, write down the basic definition. Second, create a reworded version in simpler terms. Third, sketch a diagram, just like our sparking factory. Fourth, invent a memorable story or metaphor. And fifth, explain it in your own words, as if you were teaching a friend. This framework absolutely guarantees true, undeniable mastery.
Let's wrap things up with Section 5, the Sensei Ritual, testing the weapon.
The hard truth is, if you can't explain your notes simply and quickly, you simply do not understand the material well enough yet. So at the end of your study session, I want you to close the book completely. Give yourself exactly 10 seconds to explain the concept out loud to an imaginary 10-year-old. This is famously known as the Feynman technique, named after the incredible Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman. It strips away all that complex jargon and acts as a brutal, honest filter for your brain, immediately exposing any hidden gaps in your true understanding of the topic.
The friction you feel when you're trying to compress those complex ideas into a simple 10-second explanation, that is the actual learning process happening in real time. So many students crave the illusion of ease, thinking that if reading feels easy, they must be learning. But real retention requires cognitive struggle. Biologically speaking, that mental struggle is exactly what triggers your brain to strengthen the myelin sheaths around your neural pathways. Leaning into that deeply uncomfortable friction isn't a sign that you're failing. It is exactly what sharpens your brain like a samurai sword. As we wrap up this explainer, take a moment to really reflect on your own habits. Empty your cup, find those red threads, lock them in with visual anchors, use the 5-by-5 rule, and always, always finish with the sensei ritual to prove your mastery.